welcome back, welcome back. All right, so we do have, we do have Mr. Belfon. Good morning, Rinaldo Belfon.
Hi, good morning, good morning.
Very good, pleasure. Long time no see, man, and good to see you. Happy New Year and all the best to you.
Same to you, Brother B.
Very good. All right, our conversation this morning is men budgeting and life planning. You know, men have a way, some of us who are not as ambitious will be sidetracked by a number of habits and so on, and we take away the vision for good planning going forward. For anything to happen, you have to budget. So let's speak about how do men and how should men, because in some of our lives, the women in our lives, our wives and girlfriends, are the better money manager and so on, and we rely on them. However, there are some men who just need some guidance.
Right. So, Brother B, I have to tell you that I am very traditional when it comes to, I guess, the dynamics between men and women and also the responsibility of men. I know that's not very popular to say these days, but I think that a man's role as a protector and as a provider, first and foremost, and we could go into the I guess, the biblical underpinnings of that at another time. But I think that once men understand their role, then I think that will take their responsibilities more seriously. And I do not think that the responsibility of a protector and a provider is something that should be decried or something that should not be encouraged. I really think that men need to feel empowered to take up the mantle as the head of the home and as the protectors and providers. Of course, there's unique situations in many families, but I think that's our primary role. And I guess part of the challenge of taking on that responsibility is that it can seem daunting because it's a big responsibility. But I always advocate in breaking that responsibility up into smaller parts, into more manageable sections, and then from there you're able to truly, tackle all the responsibility as a man, as a young man, no matter what age you are. So I think it's all about managing things and breaking things up into manageable sections.
All right, so all right, we're having a slight issue. Okay, fine. All right, so you're back. All right, you talk about men responsibility as head of the home, and they are to. Well, before they go into family life, you have to have a life plan going forward. By age 25, I must have I must get married, so I'm selling something to a life partner. They have to buy in or believe into what I'm selling. So, girl, I like you. However, I have nothing, but I have a plan. I intend to get into business. I am a self-employed person. I expect to expand this business. You gonna come with me? She says yes. And she buys into it because she sees the profit along the way. How do you develop the dream of expanding? Let's say you have a parlor and you want to expand it into a mini mart and then a grocery and so on. Just speak to that. What do you do in terms of how you manage your finances? Because clearly you may have to borrow by going to a financial institution. Let's speak to that. How do you manage yourself and to sell to your partner and to make family afterwards?
Right. So you're quite right. And I like the way how you set it out in that you have to sell a vision. And indeed, first of all, you have to have a vision in order to craft on yourself. And I think that's where mentorship comes into play. And I see that there's a lot of space for older men and women to mentor to come up with a vision of what their life can be, because sometimes young people they don't necessarily have an idea of what is possible. Their imagination, I guess, might be limited in terms of what is possible for their own lives, and so I guess that is a crucial role that needs to be filled by elders in our society, both men and women, in terms of helping them craft a vision of what their life could actually look like. Because sometimes unless you see something, you unable to make it into a reality. So I think that's a crucial step, that even before you own vision, that it's very useful to have someone pour into you. And I implore, of course, or elders in society to adopt a young person to help them craft their vision. And then from there, in terms of budgeting and then investing and so forth. Again, as I said before, it's very useful to break it up into smaller sections. I usually advocate that persons start saving first. Some of the traditional schemes like Susu might appeal to some. Credit unions also offering interest bearing is also a very beneficial avenue for you to start saving and then eventually graduating to investing, which is what I consider having your money start working for you. So I usually advise persons to take it in that order so that they gradually they learn more and more about the world of money because money has its own language. And in the same way you learn English, you have to start with the ABCs of money, which maybe start by first earning an income, then learning how to save, then learning how to invest. And it's not a marathon. I mean, it's not a sprint, sorry, it's a marathon. And so I encourage people to just start and don't be daunted by, oh, I want to live in a big house. And by tomorrow, it's almost impossible. Anybody trying to sell you that dream of overnight riches, it really is a dream. And I think that that is where discipline and the fortitude to continue doing the same thing
All right.
towards your goal every day comes in.
Let's start with the young man who has the discipline to join a susu. And a susu is basically a saving, right? So when he gets his hand,
Yes.
as we say in local parlance, let's say he's planning to invest into staying with the parlor or a mini mart. So he gets his lump sum at the end of 2 months or however the susu is run. When he gets that, how do you plan to invest? How do you work out your expenditure, your capital? And let's speak to those areas that when you invest to yield the profit eventually at the end of the day, it doesn't come 2 weeks after you establish a business. Sometimes it takes 2 years, 4 years for you to see the profit. Depends on what you invest in. So let's start with that lump sum. How do you utilize that to better your life going forward? Keep on that susuhane, so let's get into it.
Right. So I like the fact that you use that analogy as a parlor because I have a little bit of experience in the retail industry. And what I can tell the retail industry is that the margins are very, very small, at least in retail. However, what you find globally is that some of the wealthiest persons in any society are food retailers, grocery retailers. And why is that? Because you have a business that may not be what to say in vogue, but it is one that is usually in high demand, no matter the season, no matter the economic conditions. So planning for large sums of money that you may get from your Susuhan or so forth, I think it's very important to engage either one, a financial planner, or two, a more experienced person in the industry, or even someone within your circle who can then help you to best allocate that capital. Now, I don't know what is the best way to allocate that capital. It will vary from person to person and from time to time. But what you find is that the persons who do the best in any field of endeavor, the best CEOs in the world, the best managers in the world, are those who know what is critical for my business to grow at this point in time and then allocate the resources there. Because at one point in time, it may be best for you to engage maybe 2 or 3 employees, and another time, it may be investing in more stock as an inventory, whether it's sweet drinks you're selling, cakes, whatever. And that could only come with experience. So rather than trying to build their own experience, I usually advise persons to take a shortcut. What are the few times that they get a shortcut? And get mentors involved to help you where's the best course of action for this lump sum of money that I may have to determine where's the best way to allocate my capital.
All right, so the business is up and running. Children come into the play because they got married and they like in themselves. However, how do you ensure that you buy from yourself? Your profits is for your savings and whatever investment you want to, maybe you want to expand. Let's speak about when, I don't want to say incidents, but a situation comes up where life continues. A child is born. The business is thriving, maybe not doing so well. However, they have to navigate their way through these times of adjustment. Speak to that, because that can either make or break the business or the investment.
That's correct. And Brother B, when you've realized that the majority of businesses, not only in this country but across the globe, are family oriented, then you see the importance of both managing your family and managing your business. And so when you just start off, it might be okay. You don't have to worry about these things. But as your family grows, as you then have to start, what I would say is professionalizing the business and its operations. So one of the challenges that we often see is, for example, when mommy and daddy ready to retire and they want to pass on the business. They have 5 children. How do they split up the business amongst those 5 children? And especially when 2 out of the 5 have no interest in the business, and only one, maybe one and a half of them have any sort of desire to carry it on. So I think at this stage, when you start getting multiple families and family members and generations involved, is when you need to start engaging a business consultant. And it might sound daunting, but it's actually quite affordable to help you structure your business with it. And you have to start making decisions like business, who is an owner of the business versus who's an operator of the business. Because you can be, let's say, going back to the scenario of 5 children, all 5 could be owners of the business, as in shareholders, but maybe only one of them might be an operator of the business. So I think it's important to start having those hard times with your family early before it becomes a crisis. For example, when mommy or daddy passes away, and then it's a squabble for the resources. But one thing I must interject and say before getting to that stage of allocating shares, etc., is that it's important to treat your business as not as a cash cow to be used as a piggy bank whenever somebody wants $100 to go to the movies and they just take it out of the cash register. No, treat your business as a separate entity, and all the family members must buy into that, because I'm sure we all know stories of how businesses bust because the son, the daughter, whatever, just a personal piggy bank. And it's very important to have those clear delineations, those clear lines, indicating that this company is separate and not a part of our personal revenue or personal source of funds.
All right, so stay there a little bit, right? And we deal with the whole question of running the business professionally. So let's say the wife ran out of flour, and she send the son, boy, just go down and tell daddy to send 5 roses, flour and so on. He sent it, flour, the bread is baked and so on. However, that was not paid for. They did not buy from themselves. And right there, there is a void, or can lead to the collapse of the business. Another enemy of business is credit. You're doing well, you know, but somebody over the road doesn't like you at all. So they come into credit by you. And when they're ready to pay, they go by Mr. Chin. Let's speak to that whole question of how you manage your business professionally. And then we will talk about bookkeeping. That's another issue to know yourself. So let's go there.
Right. So I remember reading the biography of Sam Walton, who was the originator of Walmart. I'm sure everyone would have heard of Walmart, almost everywhere. And in his biography, he mentioned that his wife in the past, come to the store, pick up what she wanted to make for dinner that evening. And after taking some advice from one of his colleagues, he had to put a stop to that. And it was not a very pleasant conversation. You know how husband and wife dynamics goes sometimes. But he had to insist that, okay, if it is something for the family, it must be accounted for and it must be paid for, because one way or the other, somebody's paying for it. And if it's not accounted for, it's the company paying for it. And that was one of the changes that helped professionalize Walmart and turn Walmart into what it is now. From moving from a family chain with just 3 or 4 stores to thousands of stores, not only in the US but across Asia, various parts of China, etc. So um, pr- insisting on that is something that I definitely subscribe to. And if there's no better example to follow than Walmart if you're in this sort of business. So I encourage you to learn from their mistakes and implement the policies that they implemented. Because even though the Walmart family, who still owns a sizable chunk of the business, still have to pay for their own groceries when they go to Walmart. So that's a fun fact.
All right. So
And
there. Okay. So there are three elements of or pillars that business stand on, and you have your capital, you have your recurrent, you have your profit. Let's speak to those. And of course, your recurrent is to deal with stock taking and so on. But before we go there, the whole question of your books and managing and knowing whether you're making a profit, because there are some people who run a business and they say, girl, I only make $20 today, yes, and I don't know if I can keep up this shop here anymore because they're not doing business. Let's speak to, maybe they need to be trained in managing the business, keeping their books, and we come to these three areas, financial areas that keeps a business afloat. And when do you yield the profit? And what do you do with the profit? So let's speak to the bookkeeping aspect of business. Should you invest as a man?
right. So the I guess the prior scenario that you used about credit is a serious one, because your business can be profitable on paper, but due to cash flow issues, you may go out of business. For example, you may credit someone $100,000 worth of groceries, and they take a very long time to pay. But in the meantime, you have to pay T and Tech, WASA, etc., etc., etc. And you might find that on paper, your business might be profitable, but the cash flow means that you're unable to cover your bills, and then you're out of business. So managing the profit, or the things as we call it, versus the cash flow, is something that business owners need to understand. That honestly, bad credit is something that is a huge issue in Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago that we need to be cognizant of. And it mean sometimes they're not popular, but I rather be unpopular and remain in business than popular and out of business. So when somebody come to credit from you, I think a swift no is usually usually most of the time the best response.
All right. So managing your books is critical, because I mentioned there, you said cash flow. I call it capital, right? And that has to be, that is not necessarily tapped into if the expenditure, for example, you have to restock. They buy out all the corncores this week. So when the truck come, I'm supposed to have from that, the percentage that I'm earning from each corncores, so it goes into refurbishing when the truck come. So the corncores truck come next week. Let's say that I did not secure that money or utilize it to mean that it's part of my profit, then I could be in some trouble, because I can't buy, or I might have to go back to the capital to refurbish the parlor. Bring that, and how do you manage all of that if you are not educated in terms of how to run a business?
Managing the liquid cash to help replenish is a very important thing, as you mentioned. In terms of how do you learn it, honestly, I think that experience is probably the best teacher. And I'll go back to learning from other people's mistakes. Chatting with someone from in the industry or a similar industry as to how they manage their capital, how they ensure that they keep the shelf stocked, is something that I think is invaluable. And I think it's honestly, it's something that you could only learn over time. Of course, you could learn the theory behind it, but managing your capital is something that is best done so over time, and which is why I always advocate that persons start small and build, because even if you make a mistake early on, it won't be detrimental. It won't be a critical error to totally cripple the business. But as you learn from experience, you're able to go from there. So my advice in that is not to try to go too quickly, but take it step by step.
All right, and passing on business to, and we're not staying with business only. I'm going to come there, but I just want to, you mentioned there about passing on to the next generation. And clearly, I always remember when the Fortune restaurant and the business down there at Conquent, when you went there, it was a little boy who was there speaking both language, Chinese and English. And he was there with daddy and them. I don't know where that child is. He's a grown man now by now. But at the end of the day, we've seen that in other cultures. However, in our culture, or in our, we as African people, it's a challenge to get the children to like the business and to want to take over. I could give you a story in Arima where these very Chinese people passed on the business to their siblings, and they are millionaires today. How do we encourage that entrepreneurship to stay within the family and to become part of the legacy?
Right. So unfortunately, there is a bit of a stigma around business and money and commerce in certain quarters of the Tobago space and the Trinidad and Tobago space that we really need to fight against. One of the taboos that we have in our society is that we should not talk about money, and I totally reject that. Families and companies that are in business, they constantly talk about money, and I think it should be something that should be talked about around the dinner table, rather than talk about what's the latest gossip for the day. We talk about, hey, did you see what's going on with Amazon share price and with Facebook share price, and how this relates to Trump coming back into power and what that means for the market. These sorts of conversations around business and money are things that encourage to let the new generation, the younger generation, understand that no, this is not something that should be discouraged. It is something that is actually good, and I feel comfortable having conversations around money, because remember what I said earlier. Money has its own language, and the earlier you could start your children learning that language, the better it would be for them in the long run. So it really starts from the family, and then I'm confident that eventually it will spread to the wider society in being comfortable having conversations around money, and then you will see a change in how this is perceived in our culture.
I like that, but it's not. Trust me, I've seen different things in different places, and I like how you speak to that, right? But let's stay with us here in Tobago and how we encourage finance to be part of how we exist. We exist, and we just do not, acknowledge that it's costing me to get to work. You may own your own vehicle, but you have to buy gas, you have to maintain the vehicle, and there's a cost. Now, let's speak to that. Now, in this nuclear family where children have to go to school, 2 vehicles in the yard because wife have to go to work, husband have to go to work, and that sort of thing. So how do you bring the children to understanding that a new game might come out and they would say, Daddy, I want that, but Daddy can't afford that because his salary goes towards paying the loan or the mortgage. The wife is to see about groceries and the bills. So they barely have a cent to spare. But let's speak of the lucky family who has the ability to have other source of income. And how do you invest that? And they're doing well. What do you do with that extra source of income? They can afford the toy for the child and so on. However, there is a more ambitious way as to give the youths or the children an option of developing themselves with this investment that they can make for the children.
Well, this reminds me of a conversation that I had with a client about a year and a half ago, where they were seeking to purchase a property. They have one daughter, a very brilliant young lady. I think she's probably in first form now, And I remember she was looking. We were looking at a piece of land in Bacalet. They would have flown up from Trinidad to look for it, and she would have told, talking to the daughter. She told me, you know, this piece of land is mine. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, no, mommy and daddy sit me down. Well, I'm an only child, so they sit me down. We talk about the price of the land. We talk about what the installments will be, the monthly, because they took a mortgage, what the monthly mortgage installments would be, what my contribution to the monthly installments would be, because she had little allowance, and she would contribute a part of her allowance towards the monthly mortgage payments. And the understanding was that when she turned 18 or 19, 20, around there or so, that they will transfer the ownership of the property to her. Now, a child who, at the time, she would have been about 9, 10 years old, a child who understands about real estate and mortgages and how to save and how to plan for the future, and who knows about, not delayed gratification from the age of 9, 10 years old. By the time they're an adult, they're way ahead of the game, right? And there's nothing special or unique about this family. It was just a family that was intentional in how they set up this child's future and making them understand the value of money from an early age, and also the benefits of delayed gratification. Because she already have a plan. When she's invested in the process now, it's not that they just buy it and hey, give it to her. She's invested in the process. She's actually investing some of her own money into the process. And I'm sure next time we talk, she's going to tell me about what size of apartment building she wants to put up on the property, because she feels involved in the process early on. And that is excellent parenting, intention when it comes to planning for the future. And that those sort of examples are things that I endorse. Might not be on that same scale, but getting your young one involved from an early stage and getting buy-in, whether they want to go this road or that road, whatever windfall or investments may come their way, I think would only reap benefits for the future.
All right, so, and one of the key words for any successful venture with finances or investments, there's a word, once you have a bad habit like me who like to lime, sacrifice. There are some people who believe they can do it and still keep some of their bad habits and not give it up for, because that's what sacrifice is, give up something for something. Bring that into focus for the father or the son, because we are speaking to men this morning as to, they want to build a house, their salary can barely make it, get through. However, they have bad habits that take up size of their earnings, because they have to buy a half, and they have to buy the cigarette and the weed and other things that they can sacrifice. How important it is to sacrifice to be successful financially.
Well, honestly, that is one of the key ingredients that I find missing in many.
All right, we'll get him back there. We just a little technical glitch. Very interesting conversation. Rinaldo Belfon, and of course, is he back? Mr. Belfon, are you there? All right, so
and it unfortunately stems from a place where.
All right, so we're getting a
Hello, you hearing me?
Yeah, just repeat what you said from the top. All right, so interesting indeed. All right, okay. So we want to thank you. We want to thank you, Mr. Rinaldo Belfort. Hey, I understand yesterday was your birthday. Happy belated birthday to you, and all the best to you, and a positive young man that we need to hear from as often as we can. All right, we go for the break. See you after.
Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy. Almost everything, almost anything, almost anytime, almost every day. We in every season for every reason. Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy. Almost everything you want from a pharmacy. Just ask our pharmacist. Well, almost. We are here to serve all of you.